Hello! This is a video for my friend Kian, who tells me that he wants to learn how to make video games in Unity. And a lot of people ask me how to make video games, and so really this video is for anyone. Now, the game which we're going to be making in this video, it's called BlockSlider. It's not a completely original idea. I did base it off of other people who have made similar games, which you can find their videos on YouTube. But we're going to make our own version, and it's going to be super simple for people who have never programmed before. Okay, so I'm on the screen where we make a new project, and I'm just going to name this BlockSlider. Alright, this is a 3D game. I haven't touched any other options on this screen, and we're going to create our project. It'll take a moment to begin, but whenever it comes up, we're going to see a brand new 3D project in Unity that is fresh. All right, I cut a lot of the load time out in order to make for a shorter YouTube video, but here we go. Let's talk about what we see on the screen. This area right here is known as the scene view. It's what the developer sees as they make the game. Down here is the game view. This is what the player sees as they play the game. Over here we have what's known as the hierarchy. These are all of the objects which exist in the game. Down here we have the project view. Here's where we can manage the files related to our game. And over here we have services, and to be honest, for people new to Unity, I wouldn't even bother with this. What you do need to do is flip this over to the inspector, and so we're going to use the inspector quite a bit. Now whenever it comes to layout, this is the default layout. I like to switch to the, no, not that one. For split, no. There we go. I like to use the default layout where things have already shifted around. I've got the inspector, I've got the scene, I've got the hierarchy, and I've got the project down here. The game view is on a different tab, so you don't see the game view. Here is the asset store where you can explore and add new features to your games. For now, I hold off on using this. We're going to stick with regular things that don't require us to download any assets. Alright, let's get started with a simple project. What I would like to do is I'd like to create our BlockSlider game. So we're going to first create a cube. And so here is our 3D object. By the way, I'm in the hierarchy and I right clicked and I go to 3D object. Alright, I've got to cut that out too. So I'm in the hierarchy, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go 3D object cube. And what it should do is it should put a cube in the middle of our scene view, and you'll notice that the inspector comes up with all of these options. These are all the different ways in which we can customize a cube. Now what I would like to do is I'd like to keep this cube positioned in space at the XYZ coordinates 0, 0, 0, but I'd like to set the X scale to be 10, and you'll see that we get a super long cube now, and the Z coordinate to be 10. And this is going to represent the game board that we're working on. Alright, so I'm right clicking and I'm holding, and I want to move the view here a little bit. There we go. Now you'll see that the cube by default is white, and I don't really care for that. So I'm going to create a new material. Now anytime you create new materials in order to color your objects, you just can't directly color an object. You have to create a new material and then apply that material to the object. So it's a two-step process. And I like to keep all of my materials in a folder called materials. And so I right click in the project view, I go to create and I go to folder, and then I'm going to call this materials. Now you only have to do this once. Now whenever I go to materials, it says this folder is empty, and we're going to create a new material. And here I can make this material whatever I want it to be. And so I'm going to call this board color, because that's going to be the color of my board. And I can make this whatever color I like. Let's make it a yellow color. You can see the yellow color right there. That's a pretty good color, I think. And then I can just drag my board color to the cube, and I now have a yellow cube on the board. If at any time you're curious what this is going to look like in your game, you can flip over to the Game tab, and that's currently what my game looks like. Now I'm going to find the camera, and whenever you click on the main camera, you're going to see the camera view down here. I want to have sort of a 3/4 view. I'm going to shrink this. Oop, I'm going to move this over a little bit. So I want a 3/4 view of the game. So with this control scheme, I can move the camera up and down, and you can see how it changes the preview over here. But what I want to do at this point is I want to rotate the cube. I want to rotate the camera down a little bit. So in order to rotate, I click this little icon up here. It's called the rotate tool, and I click that one, and I rotate down a little bit. And you can see that I'm now pointed towards the ground in my preview mode. If I go over here, you can see that I get a better view of the game. So let's go back to the scene view, and there is our game board. Let's take a moment in order to create the "You Win" screen. Alright, so whenever the player completes the game, we're going to create a message on the board that says "You win." Alright, so in order to do this, I have to create a UI text element. So I've right-clicked in the hierarchy, I go to UI, and I go to text. Ignore all of the other options. I realize that there are so many options in Unity. It's overwhelming, to be honest. But a lot of professional game designers will pick from their favorite elements. This is going to be a UI text element. For this, I like to switch over to the game view just to position the UI text element. And you can see the new element that I created. It says new text, and for whatever reason it put it way down there at the bottom of the screen. Now I don't like that. What I like to do is I'm just going to reset the coordinates. And whenever you reset the coordinates, the X, Y, and Z positions of your text are going to go right to the middle of the screen. I also like to set the width to be 200 and the height to be 200. I also like to come down here. I like to set the alignment to center for both the vertical and the horizontal alignment. I like to set the font size to be nice and big, so let's say 64. Oop, let's make it a little bit wider here. And let's say "You win." All right. Now that we've selected the text of "You win," it's nice, it's big, it's visible, we're immediately going to turn it off. All right. So in order to turn off a text element, what we do is we come up here. It says right beside the word text. We go off. We just uncheck that. And if this is unchecked, you can't see it anymore. So there we go. It's gone. No, it's still there. We can always bring it back. There we go. We just brought it back. It's gone. Okay. So whenever we complete the game, we will see that message appear on the screen. Okay. Let's take a moment and create 2 new cubes. All right. So I'm going to create a cube. Oh, well, I forgot to mention this. Anytime you create a cube, you can always name the cube. And so I'm going to name this the board. All right, so that is my board. Anytime you create a new element, it's good to name it. Let's create a new cube, and I'm going to name this cube the goal. All right. Oh, you can see how goal is indented under board. That's bad. I want to drag that up so it's right above board. And now they're on the same level. Anytime you see something indented under another level, that means it's a child. We don't want any of these to be child, except for text. Text is a child of canvas. We don't want any of these to be children. Okay, you may be wondering where the goal cube is, and that's because it spawned inside of the cube. All right, let's go back over to my scene. There we go. All right, so there is my goal cube. And because I did it while board was selected, it made it a giant cube. So I'm just going to set the scale of this back down to 1 and 1. I could move around the cube however I want with these tokens. And you'll notice that as I move these things, these numbers are going to change. So don't pay attention to where I'm mouse clicking. Pay attention to the numbers which change over here, especially that Z, the Y, and let's bring this down a little bit. There's the X coordinate. Okay. What I'd like to do is I'd like to move this cube over to that side of the board, and that's at position 4, 1, 0. There we go. That works. Actually, you can see my cube over here. I'm sorry, my camera over here. I'm going to rotate this over. And I'm using a combination of up mouse wheel and down mouse wheel in order to do all these camera movements. Well, just scene view movements. I'm not really moving the camera. I'm just moving my view of the scene view. Okay, I'm going to name that our goal. And I want to give the goal a new material. Let's create a new material. I'm going to call this goal color. What do you think the goal color should be? I think a nice pretty red would do. Okay, that's good. And now I can move my red material, and I've just created my goal. Okay. Let's do the same thing. Let's create a new 3D cube. You can see my 3D cube right there. Good. I want to make sure it's not a child of anything over in my hierarchy. We're going to move it over here a little bit. And again, I like to set the position to -4, 1, 0. All right. That's gonna that set of coordinates right there is going to put it right where the bottom of that cube is level with the top of the yellow cube. All right, let's create a new material for this player, for this cube. And I'm going to make this the player color. And we will make this blue. Isn't this fun? There we go. Now, our game is going to be super simple. It is get the blue cube to the red cube. All right. We've got our board game set up. We just need to add the coding to make sure this happens. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our cube, actually I'm going to name this the player cube. There we go. I hope you're following along. Now, we're going to start writing the code here. And so this is important. The code is going to be in the language of C#. It's not the easiest language to learn, in my opinion. I think there are much easier languages, but it's the language of Unity. And so that's the language which we have to learn in order to program our elements. Okay. So in order to start programming, you click on the element that you wish to manipulate with code. Right now we wish to manipulate the player. We scroll all the way down in the inspector and we find this button that says Add Component. And what we're looking for is New Script, and we'll get a new script behavior. I just name the script whatever I named my element, or the thing that I wish to manipulate, which in this case is going to be the player. it's going to take a moment, and hopefully it will start up a new script environment. And if it doesn't start up a new script environment, what we can do is I can just click right there a couple of times and it will load up the script. There we go. Just took a moment. All right. We have our first script up on the screen. I'm going to maximize this window. And I'm going to make this text nice and big because I know that if you're watching this on a tiny YouTube window, you like the text to be nice and large. Let's talk about the parts of the code. Now, everything needs to be between public class player, where player is whatever you've named your code. So everything needs to be between the public class line and that last curly bracket. So make sure all of your code is in between there. Now, what we have here are methods. We have what's called the start method, and special code will go in the start method. And then we have the update method. Special code can go in the update method. We also have the areas that aren't in start or update. Well, I like to put variables in this area that is not in start or update. So we're going to talk about start and update in just a second. Whenever we move any object, we have to talk about the two main principles of movement, and that is speed and direction. This is from physics. Anytime something moves, there is a speed at which it moves, and there is a direction at which it moves. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say public float speed is equal to 5. All right. If you want a faster moving cube, you can say a higher number. If you want a slower moving cube, you can say a lower number. Okay. We're going to use this code for initialization. Right now, there's nothing which really initializes inside of our player. It should be ready to go immediately. But what we do need to do is we need to update it once per frame. And so what we'll do is we will we will say float x, and x is going to be controlling the left and right movement of the cube. So if I hit the left arrow key or the right arrow key on my game, I want it to move. I'm going to take a moment and look at my cheat sheet notes. By the way, I have the entire game pre-written here, and I'll link to this game in the comments. Float x, input get access horizontal. All right, there we go. So input dot get access horizontal. Now I want you to take a moment and make sure that you spell horizontal correctly. In my mind, that's not an easy word to spell. So take a moment, pause the video, make sure you spell the word horizontal correctly. We're going to multiply this times the speed, and we're going to multiply this times time. I'm going to check my cheat sheet one more time. Time.delta time. There we go. There we go. So the input get access horizontal, that controls the direction, whether it's left or right. We have the speed, and then we have the frame rate time.delta time, and that is going to be a very small number representing the amount of time between individual frames in our video game. We need to do the same thing for the x-axis. I'm sorry, the z-axis. Now this is going to change slightly. We're going to change vertical. Once again, I want you to make sure that you spell the word vertical correctly. It's a difficult word to spell in my opinion. Not everyone can spell it on the first try. And it impacts whether you will get this to work or not. The vertical is going to control the up and down direction. We now need to modify the location of the player cube based on what we now have for our x and z coordinates. So I'm going to say transform dot position plus equals new vector 3 x 0 z. Now our y, you'll probably notice that this should be x, y, z, and in this case the y is always going to be 0. The cube is never going to go up and down up and down off the cube. It's always going to be left, right, back and forth. Okay, once you get this script written, go ahead and save it. Hit Control S, or go to File and Save All, and then go back to your game and hit the play button. Now what should happen is that whenever you use the up, down, left, and right keys, the cube should move around. Now let's see if we move it off the cube. Now we're having a Wile E. Coyote moment because the cube should fall because we would like for gravity to work in our game. Alright, so we're going to play. That's really easy to fix. Go back to your player cube, and what you should do is you should go to Add Component, and you should go to Physics, and you should add, I believe it's a rigid body. Alright, and whenever you add a rigid body, that means gravity is going to be applied to that object. So rigid body equals gravity effects. So now whenever I play my game, just because I added a rigid body to my player, make sure the player's selected, make sure you add the rigid body. Whenever you play the game, whee, you can see the cube fall off the game board. There is no recovery from this state. We haven't programmed that into the game. So you just have to stop the game and keep going. Next up, right now, if I move my cube over to the red cube, nothing happens. What I would like to do is I'd like to trigger the "you win" message. Alright, so we're going to do that now. We're going to select the goal, and I'm going to go down to Add Component. We're going to scroll all the way down, New Script, Goal. Now, goal may automatically appear. Nope, that's player. All right, there's my goal. All right, now you can see the goal. Once again, we get a fresh script with start and update. Now, this is going to be a little interesting in that we need to have a it needs to be able to control a message box. And so what we'll do is we will say public message text. And I believe I'm going to check my cheat sheet. I'm sorry, game object. Game object message. Okay, great. There is no start, but there is, and there's no update either. But we do need to add a new method. So in order to add a new method, I just put my mouse, I click on the cursor right after that last curly bracket, and I hit enter a few times. And then we're going to say void on collision enter. And once again, I'm going to check my cheat sheet notes. Collision other. Oop. I hate it whenever it autocorrects. Collision other. And now, if anything collides with our goal, this is a special method. Make sure that you spell everything correctly, because Unity will not correct you if you accidentally misspell something in on collision enter. And it needs to be capital O, capital C, capital E. Let's add message dot set visible is true. All right. Now we can go back to our game. And let's make sure we select the goal. And hopefully we saved our script. Oop, I think I have a syntax error. Oh, set active. I am so sorry, people. I told you wrong. It's not set visible, it's set active. There we go. Once you get that finished, hopefully this will reset. There we go. You'll notice here on the goal script, I've got the goal selected, and under the goal script, there is a message, there is an element called message. And that message is the message variable which I created right there. And if you don't see it, that means you introduced a syntax error somewhere. So I want you to pause the video right now, study your own code, and then come back here and make sure you get this code exactly right. So we're going to minimize this. If you see the message right here, it says, what do I turn on whenever I hit, whenever something collides with me? And I want it to be this text. All right. Remember earlier whenever I said this text will be turned off? I want the text to be turned on. And that's what the set active true does. So now whenever I play my game, I can move my cursor around, and whenever I hit the goal, it says you win. And this is our first video game. I know, it's not the most exciting thing. We've only got 3 elements in the game, but you always have to start somewhere, and so we're starting here. Thank you. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments.